Thank you, friend, for joining me today. Thank you so much for your prayers and support for this ministry. Let us read today the second part of Testimony for the Church by Ellen G. White, number 13, 1867. My Father in heaven, I thank you and I praise you for this opportunity to understand the early work of our church, the people you called out from the Trinitarian Sunday keeping churches to establish a non Trinitarian Sabbath keeping church. I pray that your people will understand. In the name of your Son, through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Testimonies for the Church, number 13, 1867. Continuing his account, Sister White wrote, page number 5. A good and great work was done for these great people, dear people. Hearty and full confessions of wrongs were freely made. Union was restored, and the blessing of God rested down upon the work. My husband, that's James White, labored to bring the church up to the figures which should be adopted in all our churches upon systematic benevolence, which resulted in raising the amount to be paid into the treasury annually by that church about $300. Those in the church who had been in trial about some of my testimonies, especially respecting the dress question, on hearing the matter explained, became fully settled. The health and dress reform was adopted, and a large amount was raised for the Health Institute. Here, I think it my duty to state that as this work was in progress, unfortunately, a wealthy brother from the state of New York visited Wright after calling at Battle Creek, and there learning that we have started out contrary to the opinion and advice of the church and those standing at the head of the work at Battle Creek. He chose to represent my husband, even before those for whom we had the greatest labor, as being partially insane. Consequently, his testimony was of no weight. His influence in this matter, as stated to me by Brother Roth, the elder of the church, set the work back at least 2 weeks. I state this that unconsecrated persons may beware how they, in their blind, unfeeling state, cast an influence in an hour which take the warned servants of the Lord weeks to counteract. We were laboring for those of wealth, and Satan saw that this wealthy brother was just the man for him to use. May the Lord bring him where he can see and in humility of mind confess his wrong. By 2 weeks more of the most wearing labor, with the blessing of God, we were able to remove this wrong influence and give full proofs to that dear people that God had sent us to them. As further results of our labors, 7 were soon baptized by Brother Wagoner, and 2 in July by my husband at the time of our second visit to that church. The brother from New York returned to Battle Creek with his wife and daughter, not in a state of mind to give a correct report of the good work at Wright or to help the feelings of the church at Battle Creek. As facts have since come out, it appears that he injured the church, and the church injured him. In their mutual enjoyment from house to house of taking the most unfavorable views of our course and making the theme of conversation, about the time this cruel work was going on, I had the following dream. I was visiting Battle Creek in company with a person of commanding manners and dignified deportment. In my dream, I was passing around to the houses of our brethren. As we were about to enter, we heard voices engaged in earnest conversation. I heard the name of my husband frequently mentioned. I was grieved and astonished to hear our firmest professed friends relating scenes and incidents which had occurred during the severe affliction of my husband when his mental and physical powers were palsied to a great degree. I was grieved to hear the voice of the professed brother from New York before mentioned, representing in an earnest manner and in an exaggerated light incidents with which those at Battle Creek were ignorant of, while our friends in Battle Creek in their turn related that which they knew. I became faint and sick at heart, and in my dream came near falling, when the hand of the person with me sustained me, saying, "You must listen. You must know this, even if it is hard to bear." At the several houses we approached, the same subject was the theme of conversation. It was their present truth. Said I, "Oh, I did not know this. I was ignorant that such feelings existed in the hearts of those whom we have regarded as our friends in prosperity and our fast friends in suffering, affliction, and adversity. Would I had never known this? These we have accounted our very best and truest friends." The person with me repeated these words. If they would only engage as readily and with as much earnestness and zeal in conversation upon the Redeemer, dwelling upon his matchless charms, his disinterested benevolence, and his merciful forgiveness, his pitiful tenderness to the suffering, his forbearance and inexpressible love, how much more precious and valuable would be the fruits. Said I am grieved. He has not spared himself to save Saul. He stood under the burdens until they crushed him. And when he was prostrated, broken physically and mentally, to gather up words and acts and use them to destroy his influence, after God has put his hand under him to raise him up, that his voice may again be heard, is cruel and wicked. Said the person who accompanied me, the conversation where Christ and the characteristics of his life is the theme dwelt upon will refresh the spirit, and the fruit will be upon holiness and everlasting life. He then quoted these words: "Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." These words so impressed me that I spoke upon them the next Sabbath. My labors in right were very wearing. I then had much care of my husband by day, and sometimes in the night. I gave him baths, and I took him out to ride, and twice a day, cold, stormy, or pleasant, walk out with him, and used the pen while he dictated his reports for the review. I wrote many letters, besides the many pages of personal testimonies, most of number 11, besides visiting and speaking as often, as long, and earnestly as I did. Brother and Sister Ruth fully sympathized with me in my trials and labors, and watched us with the tenderest care to supply all our wants. Our frequent prayers were that the Lord would bless them in basket and store, in health, as well as in grace and spiritual strength. And I felt that a special blessing would follow them. Though sickness had come into their dwelling since, yet I learned by Brother Ruth that they enjoyed better health than before. And among the items of temporal prosperity, he reports that his wheat fields had produced 27 bushels to the acre, and some 40, while the average yield of his neighbors' fields has been only 7 bushels per acre. On January 29, 1867, we left Wright and rode to Greenville, Montcalm County, 40 miles. It was the most severely cold day of the winter. We were glad to find a shelter from the cold and storm at Brother Maynard's. This dear family welcomed us to their hearts and to their home. We remained in this vicinity 6 weeks, laboring with the churches at Greenville in Orleans, and made Brother Maynard's hospitable home our headquarters. The Lord gave me freedom in speaking to the people. In every effort made, I realized the sustaining power of God. And as I became fully convinced that I have a testimony for the people which I could bear to them in connection with the labors of my husband, my faith was strengthened, that he would yet be raised to health, to labor with acceptance in the cause and work of God. His labors were received by the people. He was a great help to me in the work. Without him, I could accomplish but little. With his help, in the strength of God, I could do the work assigned me. The Lord sustained him every effort he put forth. As he ventured, trusting in God, regardless of his feebleness, he gained in strength and improved with every effort. As I realized that my husband was regaining physical and mental vigor, my gratitude was unbounded in view of the prospect that I again should be unfettered to engage anew and more earnestly in the work of God. Standing by the side of my husband, and we laboring together unitedly in the closing work for God's people, previous to his being stricken down, the position he occupied in the office confined him the greater part of the time there. And as I could not travel without him, I was kept necessarily at home much of the time. I felt that God would now prosper him while he labored in word and doctrine, and devoted himself more especially to the work of preaching. Others could do the labor in the office, and we were settled in our convictions that he would never be confined to the office again, but be free to travel with me. And we both bear the solemn testimony God would have us to his remnant people. I sensibly felt the low state of God's people, and every day I was aware I have gone to the extent of my strength. My manuscript for number 11 we have sent while in right to the office of publication, and I was improving almost every moment when out of meeting in writing out matter for number 12. Both my physical and mental energies had been severely taxed while laboring for the church in right. I felt that I should have rest but could see no opportunity for any relief. I was speaking to the people several times a week and writing many pages of personal testimonies. The burden of souls was upon me, and the responsibilities I felt were so great I obtained but a few hours of sleep each night. While thus laboring in speaking and writing, letters were received from Battle Creek of a discouraging character. As I read them, I felt an inexpressible depression of spirits, amounting to agony of mind, which seemed for a short period to palsy my vital energies. For 3 nights, I scarcely slept at all. My thoughts were troubled and perplexed. I concealed my feelings as well as I could from my husband and the sympathizing family we were with. None knew the labor or burden upon my mind as I united with the family in morning and evening devotion and sought to lay my burden upon the great burden bearer. But my petitions came from a heart wrung with anguish, which made my prayers broken and disconnected because of uncontrollable grief. The blood rushed to my brain, frequently causing me to reel and nearly fall. I had the nosebleed frequently, especially after making an effort to write. I was compelled to lay by my writing, but could not throw up the burden. Anxiety and responsibilities upon me as I realized that I had testimonies for others which I was unable to present them. I received still another letter informing me that it was thought best to defer the publication number 11 until I could write out that which I had been shown in regard to the Health Institute, as they wanted the influence of my testimony to move the brethren as they stood in great want of means. I then wrote out a portion of that which was shown me in regard to the Institute, but could not get out the entire subject because of pressure of blood to the brain. Have I thought that number 12 would have been delayed so long, I should not in any case have sent that portion of the matter contained in number 11. I suppose when I should rest a few days, I could again resume my writing. But to my great grief, I found that my brain was in a condition making it impossible for me to write. The idea of writing testimonies bearing a general application was also personal, was given up, and I was in continual distress because I could not write them. We'll continue reading the next paragraph on page 12 the next time. May God our Father to bless you, and his Son be gracious to you now and forevermore. Amen.